r/Askreddit. Lawyers of Reddit, what are some interesting laws/loopholes? In the UK, the legal age of drinking is 5. As long as there is a guardian present and as long as it is not in a licensed area, pub, club, bar, etc. However, a beer garden of a pub doesn't count, so you can legally have a shot of tequila with a toddler while watching the Teletubbies. In Denmark, if the sea between Sweden and Denmark freezes and a Swede crosses the ice on foot, you're allowed to beat him/her with a stick until they leave. Best part? It's in our constitution, so it's nearly impossible to change it. Not a lawyer, but I do work as a repossession agent. If you have knowledge that the loan company is coming to repossess your car, parking it on the neighbor's property will most likely not allow us to proceed. Contracts don't allow us to repossess from different addresses on the warrant. Cars parked at the neighbor's, we can't touch it. If you kill someone and get rid of the evidence, you won't go to jail. Neat little loophole. It's been suggested that it's possible to commit a felony with impunity in the portion of Yellowstone National Park that sits in Idaho. The national park is a federal enclave and does not fall within the jurisdiction of any of the 3 states it inhabits, Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. When those states were admitted to the Union, they ceded that land to the United States and cannot enforce their laws there. When Congress created the District Court for the District of Wyoming, it decided to place the entirety of Yellowstone Park within that jurisdiction. Massachusetts has 2 ages of consent, 18 if you're a virgin, 16 if you're not. Also, self-defense is not a valid legal defense. Someone you're married to can't testify against you about something you told them, even if they wanted to, so feel free to tell your spouse about that time you did something illegal. However, someone you're married to can choose whether or not they want to testify against you about something they actually saw you doing, so only let your spouse watch you do something illegal if you really trust them. In the UK, the monarch can't technically break the law. Or at least she can't be prosecuted for it. Apparently there's a bunch involving taxes. But I'm not rich enough to know about them. If you ever want to mail something less than legal, pop it into a USPS first-class envelope. According to the mailing standards of the United States Postal Service, federal law dictates that the only person who can open first-class mail is the addressee. This means that the Postal Service, and any federal agency, cannot inspect/search first-class mail. Nice try, Julian Assange. The fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. Essentially, if the state conducts an illegal search, any subsequent fruit of the illegal search is inadmissible. What I've found interesting as a law student is how little liability waivers actually do. Basically, you can always sue someone, liability waiver or not. If it's their fault, it's their fault. It gets a little more complicated, scope of consent, etc., but yeah, a lot looser than you'd think. In India, pay a cop and you're free. Pretty neat loophole. In terms of loopholes, my criminal law professor was also a practicing criminal defense barrister, and he told this story about a case he had won. The event happened in the city of Jervis Bay in Australia, which is notable because it's an annexed part of federal land so that our capital territory can have an active port. My professor's client had gotten into a fight on the beach and, in knee-deep water, proceeded to beat the shit out of the guy he was fighting. Assault charges were laid and it went to court. My professor managed to find that, at the time, the delineation of the federal land around Jervis Bay ended at the high water mark. Also, at that time, the delineation of the coastal region belonging to the state ended at the low water mark. He managed to show that, because the crime had happened in between these 2 points, neither the state or federal court had jurisdiction to try the client, and he got off. Obviously the definitions were amended after that so that there would not be such a gap, but that one guy got through. In Australia, if you immediately contest the results of a breathalyzer test with police, you can go to a nearby hospital for a blood test within 1 hour of being tested. Can't drive yourself though. A friend was driven there but on the way ate 2 12-inch subs and drank a liter of Gatorade. The result showed a significant enough difference between the reading and the blood test for it to be thrown out in court. I'm no lawyer, but my favorite is fruit loopholes, they're delicious. In Scotland, the social work department can apply for a child protection order to take your kids off you whenever they want. In practice, the reasons they give for taking said kids aren't required to be backed up with evidence. 'Tis bullshit. In Australia, The postal rule regarding contracts is one that Australian courts seem to be unable to rid themselves of. A contract is made up of a number of things, but what makes it binding is when an offer is accepted. If a contract stipulates that acceptance can be communicated by letter, then acceptance occurs when the letter is placed in the mailbox, instead of when it is received. Hijinks ensue whenever the mail system loses letters somehow: disasters, accidents, general mail system losing stuff. The town referred to here is a border town on the English/Welsh border. You can shoot a Welsh person with a bow and arrow in Chester, inside the city walls, and after midnight. You may only shoot a Welsh person with a bow and arrow inside the city walls and after midnight. It is against the law to call any Welsh person English. All males over the age 14 must carry out 2 or so hours of longbow practice a week supervised by the local clergy. Criminals can apply for sanctuary in Notre Dame Cathedral and must be fed and watered for up to 6 weeks. If you put $1 in a machine and it plays a game and pays you money if you win, that is gambling, often illegal. If you put $1 in a machine and it dispenses a product, Coca-Cola, _then lets you play a game and pays you money if you win, that's called a promotional game and it is legal in all 50 states. You can legally view porn anywhere as long as you have a library card. In Iowa, strip clubs are illegal, but there's a loophole: it's perfectly fine if it's for art. A place called the Playhouse gets around the law by having girls rehearse Shakespeare for an hour every Sunday morning. The rest of the weeks it's fully nude stripping. There is a legal defense in Australian common law called the change of position defense. It basically says that if you accidentally receive a payment and use it to change your position, you won't be required to pay it back. It only works though if you spend the money on something that can't be traced. It also has to be something that amounts to a change of position, i.e. can't spend it on bills. So if you're in Australia, and cash every magically appears in your bank account and you don't know why, book a trip to Vegas immediately. It isn't gay to get your dick sucked. In the UK, a pregnant woman is allowed to pee in a policeman's hat if there are no toilets nearby. The policeman has to cover the woman with his coat for her dignity. I don't know the rules on POO. In Nova Scotia, Canada, it is legal to physically assault a little person if they have claimed to be magical. In Pennsylvania, you are allowed to resist arrest with an amount of force equal to that being used by the police if you are being unlawfully arrested. Good luck getting that to work, ever. In the UK, heard a story where a guy went through 3 successive speed cameras, hence got 3 tickets. He went into the police station and said, "I didn't slow down, so technically it was only 1 offense." He got away with it and only got 1 ticket. If you save Earth from an asteroid, you never have to pay taxes ever again. Lawyered. One told to me by a lawyer. Your rights regarding unreasonable searches and seizures are mostly tied to your expectation of privacy. For example, the cops can't search your car without a warrant. If they unlawfully searched your car and found a dead hooker, the evidence would be thrown out of court because it was found without a warrant. However, this doesn't apply to everybody. For example, if you stashed a dead hooker in your buddy's car, and the police unlawfully searched the vehicle, then they could still prosecute you for killing the hooker even though they performed a grossly illegal search. Why? Because you have no expectation of privacy in the trunk of someone else's car. It isn't really a loophole, but my buddy's dad, a grade A asshole, dropped this knowledge on us from his personal experience. Worth mentioning that it requires certain situations. Him being drunk, and rich, driving, he hit a telephone pole. No one witnessed it. He drove home and called his expensive lawyer. The lawyer told him though leaving the scene added to the crime, it was actually the best choice. He was then instructed to call the police, tell them he hit the pole, panicked, and left the scene. Being distraught, he began drinking heavily when he got home, and decided to turn himself in. Then just sit back, and let the expensive lawyer handle the rest. He ended up with the smallest possible fine he could receive from it rather than a DUI along with destruction of property and leaving the scene. Lucky asshole. The elephant in a matchbook law: if police are searching for something they can't look somewhere that item would not fit. An elephant doesn't fit in a matchbook, so if they are looking for a large gun and open a small stash box of drugs, they can't use it as evidence. I think this only applies where a search warrant details what they are looking for. A law student friend of mine pointed out that if you managed to make all evidence suggest that you have committed 2 murders simultaneously in different locations, you'll be acquitted of both because each murder provides a perfect alibi that you didn't commit the other. If you fail to praise Kim Il-sung, you can avoid being forced to work in a salt mine for the rest of your life by not living in North Korea. In England, it is still an offense for a member of parliament to walk into the House of Commons, whilst wearing a suit of armor. Not a lawyer, but I live in Kingston, Ontario, and last year my roommate got out of paying a $350 public drinking ticket, by choosing to fight it, and then demand that the trial be in French. In Canada you have a right to a trial in either French or English. Because there were no French judges in Canada, they would have had to bus him and the cop who wrote the ticket out to Toronto, and put them in a hotel room, which would have been much more expensive, so they simply let him go. His first language was English. You can do whatever you want without consequences if you kill the entire police force. This is going to get buried, but I'll throw it in anyway. In Germany, pepper sprays are considered to be weapons. Therefore, you need to be an adult and to have license to carry it, like policemen do. The thing is, if it's mentioned on the pepper spray can that it's only to be used against animals' attacks, it is no longer considered to be a weapon. And anyone, even kids, can carry one. Last but not least, if a person attacks you, you are authorized to defend yourself with this can of pepper spray, under the principle of self-defense.